Hello everybody, we're here again, Think Differently Thursday. My name's Helen, part of the Forge Church. This is what we do every Thursday, and this Thursday it's lovely to have Steve Irwin with me. Hi Steve.
Hi Helen, good to be with you.
How are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Really
good. Give us a brief little snapshot of who is Steve Irwin.
So I am Steve Irwin, married to Sonia, got two teenage girls, Grace and Emily. Grace is first year nursing at Norwich Uni, and Emily's GCSE stage at Stowupland High School. We live in Stowmarket, been part of the Forge for many, many years.
Fantastic. Of course, there's another Steve, or there was another Steve Irwin, wasn't there? Did you used to get confused with him ever? Have you ever properly been like mixed up for him?
No, never properly. Still get regularly questioned about, oh, Steve Irwin, are you the crocodile man? Well, of course I'm not.
You're definitely not. I also detect that, well, I know this, that's definitely not a Suffolk accent, Steve. Where are you from? Is that Geordie accent?
This is my best posh Suffolk accent, I have to tell you. You're quite right. A bit further north of Newcastle, actually, in Northumberland.
Okay, yeah.
30 or 40 miles north of Newcastle.
Right. I'm really hoping that as we chat, I don't adopt your accent. You know how that happens sometimes? Start talking like somebody else. Yeah, you're sounding like very Ant and Dec. That's their part of the world, isn't it?
It is, yeah, very much so. Yeah.
You could be hosting I'm a Celebrity right now with them.
That's maybe not my forte, but yeah.
Do you watch it? Are you a fan?
Do I watch it? Am I a fan? There's three girls in this house, so yes, we watch it. I don't have a lot of say in what's on the telly at that time of evening, so no, I'm not necessarily a fan, but look, I do quite enjoy it. So.
It's on. I said to my daughter Zoe before I started speaking to you, do you think Steve Irwin is a celebrity fan? She thought you were. She's
right.
So Northumberland is a very long way from Suffolk. So what are you doing here? I know you've been here a long time. So what brought you to sunny Suffolk in the first place?
I moved for work, really.
Okay.
Yeah, I moved for a job. What brought me here was there's a story behind that. It was a very old Land Rover. I packed up my worldly belongings into a Land Rover and travelled to Suffolk took me 2 days. Had to stop at every service station on the way to fill up the old Land Rover. I'll carry on. I actually got to petrol station at Copdock, the Tesco's one there, to fill up the Land Rover before the last leg of my journey. And I remember it clearly. It was the 30th of July, 1996. And as I pulled into the petrol station, it came on the radio that Newcastle United had signed Alan Shearer.
Oh,
and I thought, oh no, the very day I've moved away, the team. A memorable day, the 30th of July, 96.
Oh, wow.
No, I came here for work.
Okay.
I'm a farmer, or I oversee farms into meat supply. So.
Okay. Why did you come in a Land Rover?
Because I was young and daft and I could fit all my possessions in a Land Rover and it was free.
Right. Wow. And so you'd moved right away from home and family, and did you know people in Suffolk? Or this is just where the job was?
No, I didn't.
Right.
Yeah, so I went to college. My family moved away and eventually I realised and tracked them down, but that's another story. So I was after college.
They moved away while you were away.
But after college, I worked on a farm in Northumberland for 6 or 7 years and had my own flat in the village, etc. So I was quite independent. And long story short, I got offered an opportunity to come and have a look around it was a duck farm in Suffolk, and at the time I had two thoughts. One was, oh, I didn't know ducks were farmed. And the second one was, I'd never been to Suffolk. So that was two good reasons to go.
Yeah.
So that was my my introduction to Suffolk, was out of pure nosiness. And it eventually led to would you apply for a job and a job offer? And I moved to Suffolk in 96.
Wow. And are you still, is it still with ducks, or have you changed what you do over the time?
No, I've changed. Yeah, so I'm now working with pigs.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so this year has been the maddest year for everyone. So how has work changed for you? I mean, I talked to some farmers. I was out with a farmer last weekend, and they were saying, well, actually, it hasn't changed a lot. A lot of farming just has continued. But what about you in your role? Has it made a big difference this year?
Yeah, massive actually. I mean, as you say, generally farmers are quite good at the self-isolating thing. They lock themselves in a tractor and they're quite happy for weeks on end normally. My job's slightly different because I sort of oversee a team of people who manage a few farms that the business owns and operates, but also farmers that contract to produce for us. So my job's really about, well, spreadsheets and people and making sure the team's all heading in the same direction,
Sure.
But as a business, we've had some real challenges with COVID and with members of the team either catching it or having to isolate because of it, and the impact that has quite quickly on the people and the business. We've had some upsides. People have been at home. They've been eating 3 meals a day at home, and what we produce is high welfare, ethical, environmentally friendly pork products. And that's what people have been buying. I think people have really sort of realized the value in their food choices and the impact it has on their health. So from a business point of view, it's generally been good. Operationally, there's been lots of challenges. It's really difficult not being with the team and being able to sit with people face to face. So spend all day on conference calls.
Doing this. And then I'm making you do it again now. Sorry. Do you think there's elements of what you do for work that when we come out the other side of this, do you think there are things that you've kind of recognized are good changes and that you won't go back to things that you were doing before because of what you've learned from this time?
Yeah, I think there's lots of different ways of working. There's been lots of investment into sort of video conferencing facilities that we're much better at now than we were 9 months ago whenever we headed into this. I've lost my desk in the head office, which is kind of fine, but there's a downside to that as well, just in terms of being around that team and interacting with them. But because my role is to head up the agriculture team, really we should be out and about. We should be on farms across the country rather than sitting in the office. So I volunteered to make more space to keep other colleagues safer and took my team out. So that's probably changed for the long term. I think fundamentally one of the good things is we talk about health and safety a lot, but actually it's put the priority on the health, whereas before it was very much on the safety side. So now it's back on the health. It's on the people, it's on the teams, which is probably a good thing that will last.
Can't be a bad thing, can it?
That will stay with us.
That's really good. Great.
So much has changed. Most of it will stick, I would think.
And it's we've had to be so agile with the change, haven't we? I think some of the changes we've made in various different places, if we had known we were going to do it, and if it had been part of an original plan, it would have taken years, wouldn't it? There'd have been meetings and minutes and discussions. But because we were thrown into it, I think we've realised how quickly we can change, haven't we?
Yeah, I remember the first announcement that Boris Johnson made back in March. I was in a bed and breakfast up in North Yorkshire near head office there, which is where I stay most weeks, and watching the announcement 8 o'clock on that Wednesday evening. And by the Friday, we had totally transformed the way that we work. So by the next week, we were absolutely into the swing of this sort of new way of working. And you're right, you couldn't plan that. You would have had far too many committees and discussions and reviews. And probably pushback as well, because people don't always like change, do they? But because there was no choice, it was just like, now we've got to find a new way. People have done it, haven't they? And we're all in it together. There was no option. We all just had to react and respond really, really quickly and sort of get on with it. And we could moan about it and get on with it, or we could be happy about it and get on with it, but the
Yeah.
outcome was going to be the same.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Oh, that's interesting to hear about your work life. Tell me about your family life as well then. So you've talked about coming to Suffolk, but what had life been before Suffolk? What was your family upbringing and, you know, childhood? What was that for you?
Yeah, so there's mum and dad, myself, and a younger sister, Caroline. Very sort of normal upbringing in rural Northumberland for most of it. We did move around a little bit with dad's work, but most of it was in rural Northumberland. Beyond that, we have a very wide family. We're quite a big family, quite a close family, most of whom are in farming one way or another, hence my interest and passion, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, big family, all very close. Most of us all went to the same church, so church on a Sunday was interesting.
So faith was big part of life then? It's part of your upbringing?
Yeah, very much so. Most of the family have a strong, active faith and would be at church, and we typically went to church 3 times on a Sunday. You know, Sunday morning and then a Sunday school and then a Sunday evening again, and possibly once more again for a youth event in the evening. So
hasn't church changed so much? When I say to my kids that was like my experience as well. In fact, I think our family was a bit rebellious. I don't think we went 3 times, but there was opportunity to. I think you could even go to like 2 different Sunday schools as well, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. Just incredible. It was just the whole day.
Yeah, and I think, you know, life and society and our communities have changed so much as well. It's really good that the church has adapted and has stayed relevant.
Yeah, absolutely. So you must have come to a point, I know that you're a Christian, Steve, so you must have come to a point at some place that you decided that you wanted this faith for yourself as well. How and when did that happen for you?
Yeah, very much so. You know, as I said, my family are all Christians, and they were actually great at modeling a sort of faith-filled life, and it was just normal. You know, it wasn't faith in a box. It wasn't just for Sunday. It was part of life, part of community, and I knew there was sort of something. But I guess when I was not even sure, maybe 9 or 10, it was one winter and it was snowing, and my father had been asked to preach at a church in Newcastle, so we'd been dragged along and been invited to somebody's house for tea beforehand and had jam sandwiches and a cup of tea, and it was all...
You didn't have to sing in the service, did you? Me and my brother sometimes had to sing in the service when my dad was speaking.
You've obviously never sat in front of me when I am singing, Helen. You would have known the answer to that one. Not me. And this was just torture, you know, and it was snowing outside, and as a 9-year-old I wanted to be out in the snow, and then we went to this church service. But my dad was actually preaching on Paul and Silas in the jail, and how they were imprisoned and they maintained their faith, and it kind of resonated with me that night. I just felt I was imprisoned and I wanted to get out, but there was more to it. So there was that sort of sparked my interest, and then summers later, 4 or 5 years later, I was at sort of Christian youth camps, and they were great because again I saw people just, you know, a few years older than me, but modeling their faith and telling their story of how they'd come to faith and what it meant to them. And it was then that I realized that, you know, faith could be real. It had to be personal. But bizarrely, I didn't quite know what to do about it. So then it was about 1984, I think, when Billy Graham had his Mission England campaign.
Yes.
And that was the point where I sort of made a decision. But there was those 3 or 4 key stages beforehand. It was 84 when I sort of made that decision.
So was that actually at one of the Billy Graham rallies?
Yes.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. At the end of every one, he made a sort of call, anybody who wants to, you know, become a Christian to go forward or whatever. So yeah, that was it.
Wow. Oh, I love that story. And so faith has obviously impacted your life ever since. How would you say your faith is played out within, or is it within your work environment? You've told us what you do for work. You know, how do those worlds kind of come together?
Yeah, I touched on it a second ago. Actually, I try not to put life into different boxes.
Mm, mm,
I try just to live my life the best way I can all of the time in a fairly consistent manner. And I fail regularly at that, but I treat my work life, or I try and treat it or approach it with sort of biblical principles. I try and treat people with respect. When you get those difficult situations, you sort of think, well, how should I deal with this? There's normally a biblical model for most of those scenarios.
mm,
Um, I I do actually pray a lot before I go into meetings, not just difficult meetings, but most meetings.
mm.
If I'm not bouncing from one video call straight to the next one, I do often pray. I I don't pray often enough after the meetings. Those prayers of thanks. Moving on, and I fail regularly at that. But I do believe that prayer makes a difference, not just on church-related activities and
Mm,
prayer events, but actually in day-to-day
mm,
living when we're dealing
mm,
with people, whether it's clients or suppliers.
mm,
Just try and treat them as the Bible teaches.
mm. And I think it's so what God wants for us, isn't it? That He is just present and involved in everything that we do, and never just relegated to one part of our lives, especially not just to church. That's not having a relationship, is it? It's everything that we do.
No, not at all. And for me, it's vital that he's there all the time, because
Yeah.
I don't suppose I'm any different to anybody else. Sometimes I lean on God for strength and support, and other times I think I'm capable of doing it myself. But I know where my strength comes from.
Yeah.
But there's sort of a fear that if I don't have God in all areas of my life, I'll not be leaning on Him when I need Him the most.
Yeah.
So I just try and be fairly constant in the way I go about
Mm,
thing and the way I do
mm,
things. As I
yeah.
say, I
Mm.
fail quite regularly, but that's the approach I
Don't we
take.
all? Don't we all? Um, and we've referred to our church. We belong to the same church, the Forge, and you, like me, will have different experiences of different churches, and churches have all sorts of different structures of leadership. So we have elders and staff. So I'm part of staff. You're one of the elders. In fact, you're chair of elders, aren't you? I think, sometimes our staff team, just by the nature of what we do, are more visible, perhaps the elders less so. So how would you explain to folk, what is your role within our church?
Yeah, so I guess the role of the elders team is it's to hold the mission and the vision of the church, and to make sure there's a plan there to deliver it.
Yeah.
Make sure there's adequate resources, to make sure it can happen, really. And that probably sounds very grand, but in reality, we work very closely with Steve Fenning. We meet as a team every fortnight or so, and we delegate as much as possible to the staff team. Helen, that's that's what we do. You know that. Um, but yeah, it's about holding the mission and the vision of the church, and sort of listening to people, and being in tune with what people are saying, and the direction the church is going in, and
Yeah.
making sure that it's in the direction that we think God is leading us to.
Yeah, yeah, great. And of course, these have been crazy times for the entire world, and industry and business and organisations, and that's churches as well. And so for us as a church, so much online stuff. I was in a meeting this morning, and just kind of celebrating the fact that we were already live streaming. So we were already a bit ahead of the game, when it meant that we had to kind of move so much more online. But how, just personally, how has it been for you, the fact that up until the beginning of the year we were meeting together, we were seeing lots of people, and now everything is online? What does that feel like for you personally?
Um, I think it's been very mixed. When we first went online, it was a bit of, wow, this works. We can do this. And I was genuinely, just blown away by the fact that the staff team and some volunteers could take a church office and just turn it into what we now call a studio.
Yeah.
It's record time and minimal budget, and just got the job done so well. But for me, yeah, Sundays can be a bit of a challenge. Some of the midweek stuff is great. But what I've found more recently is we've sort of got into lockdown, and you find new rhythms to life and ways of working. As I said, most of my work is Yorkshire and north of there, so I do some quite long journeys, and it's great to be able to download a whole series and just listen to the 4 Sundays back to back.
Yeah.
Because it just gives it a very different context.
Okay.
And that's worked well for me. So it's time in the car alone listening to the Forge. I found really, really useful.
Great.
And
it's
good. The Game Changer series that we did just recently, I just found it absolutely fascinating and really thought-provoking to see how different people were sort of living their life. And the challenges that we're bringing. And as I reflected before the call there tonight, I was thinking, who would have thought in January, when I had a series called Breathing Room, we would have been given quite so much breathing room in 2020. So we need to be a little bit careful about that. But yeah, so mixed, and I've had to work hard to find ways for me to engage with the online church, but getting there now.
Great. And of course, as a church, as leadership, we're really wrestling with the big question of what we do and what we look like after Corona. Do we go back to what we were? Do we do things differently? And so what are the processes that, as elders, you're going through with us as staff as well, just to be looking at those kind of questions of what next?
Yeah, what next? That is the big question, isn't it? But look, as you know, we've been working as one team, really, staff and elders, to look and consider different options. We don't yet have a particularly clear view on what that would look like. We've had some really good options, but actually they're not complete yet. They still need to be worked on. We need a model that allows us to build relationships with the wider church community. As we said, online's great and it's a fantastic asset, so that's kind of got to continue. But we need something that allows us to interact with people and build community and get to know each other around about that. Whatever we do, we need to work with a balanced budget. That's how we've always operated in the past. We tend to spend what we receive, but no more. So we're continuing to consider and develop all possibilities. We're consulting with groups of people within the church and outside of the church, actually, to see what those that don't attend the Forge think they would like from a church in the future. So yeah, there's plenty to be done yet, and quite a collaborative process or processes that we're going through to try and refine or come up with a model and then refine it and find one that works. But I suspect we'll move from or evolve from where we are now to something fresh in the first half of 2021, and then it could well change again for the second half of 21, because at the minute we still don't have a date as to when lockdown is going to be released. We're getting some clarity. They're talking around Easter for vaccines and things, but really until we have a date where we know we can meet in person again, it's really difficult to start booking venues or organising those in person get-togethers.
And I've found this in other areas of life, whereas in the past you might have made big decisions. It's kind of these bite-sized chunks for now, isn't it? Like maybe like this for now, like this. Yeah, it's just a different way of looking ahead, isn't it? Are you? How are you as a person with change? Are you someone that like really embraces change and it excites you, or are you kind of slower to adapt? Where do you sit with change?
Oh, do you know, I like change.
Okay.
I like it all the more if I'm involved in the process.
Right.
I think that helps most people.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not necessarily an early adopter to put
Mm,
labels on the sort of change processes, but
mm,
once I understand what the change is about, or I get it, or I understand it, or if a decision's been made, I want it done.
mm.
It's become history, so it's really
Right.
get it
Get
done.
on with it.
Let's get into
Yeah.
that space. Stop
Yeah.
talking now. We've done all of that.
Yeah.
Move on.
Yeah. 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 I think I'm a bit similar. Yeah, I get that. What about your whole family? How's the change over the year been for your family? I know you said earlier you've got 2 girls. So what has 2020 been in the Irwin household?
Um, yeah, it's been interesting. It's been good. There's been stages where there's been 4 of us in the house working, all in different rooms, different
Yeah.
corners of the house.
Yeah.
We're not good at working in the same room as each other, so we go to
Right.
different corners. We regroup at meal times.
What goes wrong if
Uh,
you work in the same place?
oh, it's just far too noisy, and we're shouting over each other.
I want to talk too much. That's my problem.
Yeah, yeah. No, so and Grace was sort of A-level stage last year, so she managed
Okay.
to get all of our work done. She was on a BTEC, so got all of our work done before lockdown, or 95% of it. So it was good for her because she knew outcomes and results. But she was supposed to have a lovely long summer to mess about and enjoy, and of course
Yeah. Yeah.
that didn't happen. Emily's been working really hard at school, and she gets on with that, and she's very proactive about getting schoolwork done, which is good because I'm certainly not a good teacher, and Sonia's been working as well. So there's a limit to the number of days and hours in a day rather.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've when we're normally as a family, we have a lot of visitors, a lot of family come to stay with us.
Yeah.
And so I'm working in the spare room at the moment, which is normally full of grandparents or friends or
Yeah.
family. So
Yeah. Because both of
we
your families aren't local, are they?
no, that's right. So yeah, Sonia's are in Northern Ireland, and
Yeah.
mine are now in the Midlands, but they're several hours away.
Yeah.
So it's been really frustrating not being able to fill the spare room and
Yeah.
spend time with families. Just
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah.
been different, but it's been good. We've quite enjoyed the slower
Yeah.
pace, the different rhythm to life.
Mm. And presumably, if you're normally away quite a lot, have you been at home much more?
I have just recently. So in
Okay.
the first lockdown, I'm obviously a key worker, so I was still
Right.
away for 3 or 4 nights, or 3 nights,
Okay.
4 days typically. Um, but more recently, yes, I have been at home a bit more. So I think I've slotted back in okay. They haven't booted me out just yet.
As long as you sit tight and watch Celebrity.
Exactly. Yes. So no,
Oh, good.
and it's really nice just to have those extra evenings
Yeah.
sitting on the sofa chatting and
Yeah.
making cups of tea and doing what
Definitely.
you do, front
Yeah.
of Celebrity or whatever's on the TV.
Definitely. Oh, it's really, really lovely to talk to you. It's really lovely to just hear a bit more about your life and what makes you tick. Thank you so much for giving me some time this evening. I've just got one last question. I'd love to ask her, and finally, question. And finally, what would you say personally you have learnt about yourself during 2020? I'm assuming you've learned something. You can just say I haven't learned
Yeah.
anything about myself.
Oh, probably learned a lot. Couple of things spring to mind. Certainly in the first lockdown, I learned very quickly that if you eat more than you exercise, you put on that extra lockdown kilo.
Oh, I thought the clothes had all just got smaller.
Yeah, so did I, but no, they hadn't. It was me. I enjoy my food, so definitely that balance between work, family time, exercise, eating, getting the balance right is you've got to be more intentional about it than I had been for a while. So there's that, and the other key learning, I guess we touched on it earlier, that we can all adapt really quickly, much quicker than we imagine. We can adapt, we can change, we can enjoy interacting with people on Zoom or whatever, or FaceTime, whatever the format is.
Yeah.
Um, just because it works doesn't mean we have to necessarily like it, but it works, and we should embrace it, and we've done that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't replace spending time with people, because it has a start and a finish time, and it's very tightly defined. It's not like just sitting in the sofa
in
chatting,
the same
and having a cup of
space.
tea, and
Yeah.
spending a bit of time listening to friends and family. So
Yeah.
it doesn't replace that. So there's definitely a couple of learnings that I enjoy people more than I thought I did before 2020.
Maybe it's made us realize what's important to us and what we've taken for granted as well at times.
It has.
Thank you so much for chatting to me, Steve. It's been really great, and we really value all that you do for our church and cheering up the elders as well. We really appreciate that. So thank you. Thanks for chatting to me. See ya.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.